Hello and welcome to Cyrils Brettspiele durchgespielt, another episode of Table Talk with Showan and Nils. Today we are talking about Imperial Settlers from Portal Games. This is a brand new 2014 Essen release. So today, who is going with the rules? You or me?
I think I'll take over this time.
Okay, perfect, good.
So at the start of the round, we do the lookout phase, in which players will have a chance to gain a card from their faction-specific faction deck, and they'll gain a couple of cards from the common location deck using a draft system, in which a certain amount of cards will be dealt. First player gets a chance to look, he'll take one, pass them down, and this will go around the table. Then we'll draw more cards. The last player will take one, pass them back, and then back to the first player, who will take one and discard the rest. After that, we do the production phase, in which players will gain the resources based on their cards. They'll gain resources based on what deals they've made throughout the game. And they'll gain resources, which is part of their base faction. They automatically gain this every round, at the minimum. So during the action phase, players will take an action which can include building a location, in which they will put the building down and then spend the resources to build that. They will make a deal, which lets them, if they have any of their faction cards, they can put it under this little board at the top, and that will allow them to gain resources on a future turn. They can raise an opponent's building or take a card in their hand and raise that, and they will gain the resources which are pictured in the top corner here. You can activate a location-specific action. In this case, if I turn in a person and a food, I'll gain 2 victory points on the victory point track. The final possible action, you can turn in 2 workers to gain a resource which could include wood, stone, food, or a card. And after all that is done, then the cleanup phase happens, where all the resources get discarded, except for the faction's ability, which lets you store a certain amount of resources. In this case, the Japanese player can store food that they've earned that round. The Egyptians can store gold each round. The Romans are allowed to save their raise tokens, which will help them later on when they're raising opponents' buildings. And the barbarians can store workers to use next round. After the cleanup phase, then we move the round tracker to the next round, and we start again.
Okay, Showan, thanks for the rules, and now let's talk a little bit about the components and the quality of the material. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think they're great. I mean, the level of detail on the meeples, instead of the standard meeple, I mean, probably can't see it from here, but it's got a unique shape to it. The little apple, or is that a tomato? I don't know, I can't figure that out. Anyways.
Maybe a pumpkin?
Maybe. A red pumpkin, I have no idea. The wood, yeah, I mean,
we are very close to Halloween, so maybe a pumpkin.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. The cards, great quality. I think they're thick enough. I mean, personally, I'd probably sleeve the cards for a game like this. There's a lot of shuffling, but yeah, I mean, they're great quality.
Yeah, we should sleeve that.
I think so. I think it's worth it. If you're going to play it a lot, then you want to...
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. I have a little bit of a problem with the size of the text on the cards. Maybe here's something with a little bit more. You can see nothing. So that's a problem. I'm slightly a little bit of blind, I would say. A little bit like a snake. So, and for me it's always what is on there? So the text size is not ideal for me, personally.
I've heard that from other players too. I've taught the game to. They said that the text was a little bit smaller. I mean, I don't know how you could fix that other than making a bigger card, but you know, that's...
Oh, on most of these cards there's a lot of space here. You can easily use a bigger size for the text.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's some minor complaint, I think, but it's worth noting.
Yeah, definitely, yes. That's the reason why I'm...
Yeah, also the player board. I mean, this player board, is it 100% necessary to the game?
Definitely not.
I don't think so, but this makes a huge difference in keeping the game organized. I mean, you know that you're going to place your production cards here, your feature cards here, your action cards here. It's just an excellent way to keep players organized so that they can find their buildings later on.
And there's a small detail I always like in games, which is this size of the card is a female one and this is a male one. So you can choose if you want to play the male or the female one, which I appreciate. This is is a good use of a double-sided board.
I think so too. It doesn't impact the game at all. It's just,
definitely not, but it's a nice little option.
It shows that they're thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, so gameplay. What did you think?
So gameplay, it's smooth, it's easy. Once after the first round and after you learn the rules, which are not really bad, it's easily to play, but still everybody is playing in his own world. There's, for me, not enough playing together with the other ones. It's just building your own empire. There's no interaction for me.
Well, I think definitely the game doesn't do anything new, but I think it focuses on being streamlined and playing very smoothly, and there's very few rules, like you said. It's very easy to teach it.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of randomness in the game, I mean, which could be a bad thing, could be a good thing. It depends on how you look at it.
You know by heart, and I guess a lot of you know as well, I'm not a big fan of card games. So for me, drawing cards is always just pure luck. It's rolling a D20 or D50 or whatever, drawing a card and hope that's a good one. Yeah, maybe sometimes a D100. So, and hoping that's a good one. But in this game, there are a lot of cards double or triple in this deck, so it's not extremely bad. And building your own production engine is the key of the game. So, for an example, for the Roman, they have buildings here. My the Roman this time. So, for the Roman, they have buildings which gives you victory points if you build another Roman building. So, and here are 3 or 4 of these cards in this deck of 30 cards, maybe.
That's not
40.
unique to the Romans either. Other factions have that kind of card too that lets you do the same idea.
So it's not extremely bad, but it's still drawing cards with a huge amount of luck.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I think there's a learning curve to this game as well. I'll talk more about that later, but yeah, it really helps if you know your faction and the strengths and the weaknesses. I almost forgot. This completely slipped my mind. I forgot to mention the solo rules included in the game. Which, yeah, I found it was a good way to practice and to learn the faction. That helps you kind of learn what each of them can do and what they can
Definitely, I personally appreciate every game which has solo rules. Not even only to learn that, but sometimes everybody of your friends is ill or quitting a date, and then you can easily play a game. So for me it's, and for me, for my walkthrough channel as well, so playing that in front of the camera with solo rules is always a good thing. So yeah, I appreciate every game with solo rules. I have another point which is, from my perspective, very interesting in that game, and which is for a card-based game, good, not really new, but really good to combine that. And this is a resource management. In this game, you have always not enough resources to do what you want to do.
That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah, so, of course, yeah. And this this part is usually known for Wallace games or whatever, but not for card-driven games. So to not having enough resources in the game is a really huge part of the game, and this is what I like on that game, really.
Yeah, and that ties into the strategy, which I want to talk about later on, but it's definitely a resource management game. I think it's a huge aspect of it.
Definitely, yes. Okay, let's talk about a little bit of critical points. So from my perspective, and this is, sorry for saying that again, but for me worst thing in this game ever is the small text on the cards. I hate it.
It really bothers him.
Yeah, yeah, of course. That's the worst part ever, and my biggest concern was the game. So, do you have... Yeah, that's what I'm doing always. So, what is your concerns about the game? Do you have any problems with the game?
My biggest concern is the scoreboard.
Okay, I know.
See? I don't like the scoreboard. I mean, I think it's too small. The box is a good size. I think they could easily have made it a bigger board, and the spaces would have been bigger, and then you wouldn't be moving these tiny little cardboard chits around, which I think is a pain when you got multiples stacked on each other. It's just hard to fiddle with. I'm not crazy about that.
Yeah, I agree. Another point I have, and I've never figured out why. So the rulebook contains, so let me double check that for you, 16 pages. So, and the rules are so easy and simple to learn. Why this is 16 pages? I honestly, I don't know.
Well, keep in mind there is one section that explains the solo rules, so it's not 16 pages totally for the multiplayer.
Yeah, but for me, it's honestly, I have no idea. Every time I keep a rulebook in my hand and I have 40 or 50 pages, I put the game back into the shelf and waited 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Years.
Yeah, not years, weeks.
Okay. But with the other, and it's not really a huge complaint, some of the cards, the effects were a little bit, I found them a little bit unclear. There is a FAQ in the book, which is great. It explains a lot of the key points in the game.
Definitely,
but there were still a couple from each faction that I had to go on Board Game Geek and look in the forums to see what other people, how they interpreted it. And like I said, there wasn't many, so it's not too much of a disruption. I just felt that they could have included that maybe in the FAQ, and it would have been a lot easier.
Definitely, yes. One thing I have to say with card games is, on one hand, I hate the randomness in card games. On the other hand, every time you play a card game, the replayability of a card game is really high, because you never know if the good card is in the top of or in the bottom, and that makes each time you play a card game totally random.
Well, see, with randomness, and when I was doing research on the game too, I heard a lot of comments about that, and it's like, there seems to be this negative opinion of a game being random. I mean, to me that's not a bad thing.
Why not? You can't play. You can't plan ahead, and you can't do whatever you want.
But I mean, think about poker, for example. Poker's a random game. I mean, poker's all about getting random cards, and you're making the most with what you have.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Well, that's pretty much the idea here. And
but if I want to play poker, I play poker instead of Imperial Settlers.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody has that same barrier. It's random for everybody. It's not just one person. So I mean, in that sense, it's balanced. It's fair.
Yeah. Speaking about balances, for me, the balance between the fractions is really good. I try to avoid outstanding, but it's really good. All the fractions has a different way of you have to play it, but it's definitely a good balancing between the fractions.
Yeah, when I hear complaints about a game saying it's unbalanced, then right away a red flag goes off, and I'm thinking, okay, if this person either not very familiar with the game, usually the case is they're not very familiar with it, they don't understand the game, or they're not very good at the game like me. I totally suck at this game. I'm really bad at this game. Usually I'll start out strong, and then I just finish in last place. And that annoyed me in the beginning. I was like, why? This game is stupid, like why? And yeah, I just turned it to be that, yeah, it's not the game, I just suck at it. Yes,
yeah, sometimes you're right. You need to play a game 4, 5, 6 times to know exactly what you...
Well, that's where the learning curves comes in. I mean, I think there's not a huge... Well, I guess it depends on your experience level. I mean, for me, it's a significant enough learning curve where I would need to play this a few times, and maybe the average gamer would have to play it just a few times just to learn about their specific faction and learn about their strengths and weaknesses.
You mean to build a production engine, a really good one?
Yeah, like how to do it more efficiently. I mean,
yeah.
Because for me, I'll usually end up building maybe 5 or 6 buildings, or maybe the most like 7 or 8, and then I'm kind of struggling with the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's not how you play this game.
I have another point which I definitely have to mention and definitely point out. First of all, I read the rules. I thought, hey, what is this for a stupid thing? So every time you use your resources, which I told you you never have enough resources, and use a specific action, use this wooden meeples and put it on the card.
Yeah.
So I thought, hey, what is this for a stupid thing? I can easily trash it in the middle.
Card, yeah.
But to keep in mind, especially in round 4 or 5, where you have 20, 30, 40 actions sometimes.
Maybe you got like
so
this.
put it on here and leave it there, then you know exactly you have used this action once before. So that's really helpful, and please, I skipped that in my first game, and I guess you as well, and we throw all our resources in the middle. That's not a good idea.
Yeah,
so you will definitely forget, and especially all the other Hawkeyes around the table. Did you use that before?
Yeah, basically that's what it was. I can't remember if I used this action already. Well, if we would have kept the resources there, then we would know, hey, I used it already.
Yeah, very, very helpful hint in the rules. Definitely.
It's yeah, I mean the game is great. I really do like it. I didn't at first until I started reading more about it, and that's when I came to the conclusion. Yes, the learning curve makes a huge difference. I mean, if you're going to play this game casually, I probably wouldn't say you're going to get the most out of it. Definitely need to play it a few times, learn the strengths of each faction, learn the strengths of the other factions so you can counter them, and then that's when you're going to experience it, get the full experience of the game, and you'll get the most out of it, I think.
So that means for you, you highly recommend that, or you recommend that, or what is the bottom line of what you're talking about?
Well, I would recommend it if you are the kind of person who likes the game, like card games, and you like stringing together combos, and you like managing your resources, like very particular, and you like that kind of tension about, I don't have enough to do this, I don't have enough to do this, what am I going to do next? What order am I going to place them down?
Yeah, that's a feeling, always.
Yes, that's what this game is all about. You want to build that economic engine to get you the resources that you need to get the points later on in the game. If you like that kind of thing, this game is a must-buy. If you're not really into that, then I don't think you're going to enjoy the game as much.
For me, it's a little bit between recommendation and okay. I guess I expected more than it is for me. Every time I play the game, I'm in between. So for a card game, it's too long from the time perspective. Was not 80 to 100 minutes. It's a little bit too long. For real resource management, there's not enough meat on it, and there's too much randomness. So every time I'm in between. Some people love this in between, this mixture of the game, but for me personally, it's not definitely my cup of tea. So for people who really like mixtures of card games with resource management, I'm definitely say a recommendation. For me personally, it's more a little bit okay instead of. Every time you would ask me and say, hey, I have to play that again, and I have to play with a Japanese again, I wouldn't say no.
That's his faction of choice, the Japanese players.
Yeah, I love it, but yeah, I would prefer real strange economic games or very light, easy and fast to play card games of only 40 minutes.
Well, I think with more experience and learning the factions and becoming more familiar with it, then the playing time will be reduced. I mean, the games that I played, and again, it's when I was playing, it was usually teaching people the game, and I found that the games went on too long, and that creates a problem when you have people who are a little bit more experienced, they know what they're doing, and then you have these guys struggling because they don't know what they're doing. And then they just sit there and they're like, oh, you can see them losing interest, they're getting bored.
Yeah.
So this has been our view of Imperial Settlers. We hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to our channel, and hopefully we can keep entertaining you with more amazing videos.
Bye!